Shana Tova, everyone. Happy New Year. Have you ever thought about that expression, Happy New Year? What does the word happy really mean? Aristotle viewed life as a series of opportunities to make ourselves happy. Thomas Jefferson placed the pursuit of happiness amongst the three human inalienable rights. And although we use the word frequently, I don't think we always use it precisely. For happiness is not simply the state of feeling happy. Rather, it is an umbrella emotion for satisfaction, warmth, meaning, pleasure, comfort, even peace. When we say that we are happy, we are not simply saying that we are not sad. We are making a larger statement about the state of our state. This year, the second World Happiness Index was published, which seeks to quantify what it is that makes people in our world happy and where the happiest people in the world live. They evaluate happiness based on GDP per capita, social support, life expectancy, social freedom, generosity, and the absence of corruption. Based on those, you might expect that we'd fall in the top 5, maybe even the top 3. For we live a long time, we enjoy great social freedom, and the average income per person has increased roughly 3 times since 1960. But the opposite is sadly true. We as a country and as a society have not gotten happier. In fact, since the first World Happiness Index was published in 2012, the United States' happiness has decreased by 1/3%. We now fall 14th in the world, behind all the Scandinavian countries, Canada, Australia, and now Costa Rica, and indeed, the state of Israel. Researchers say that the reason we are not as happy as we might assume is because of the hedonic treadmill, the crash that we experience after the high of purchasing something new. You see, we in the US consume 30% of the world's resources, and we make 30% of the world's garbage because we love new things. New sneakers, new cars, maybe even the iPhone 10. But at a certain point, we may notice that any pleasure taken from what we buy and use doesn't always last. It doesn't nourish us in the ways that really count. We know that happiness cannot be pre-ordered or purchased. Happiness comes from the sense that what we already have is enough. And we know all too well the ways in which we try and compensate for that feeling of emptiness or scarcity. We might buy things we don't need. We might drink too much. We might spend too much time on social media. We might be extreme in our diet or exercise. But any way you cut it, we are filling the void in whatever way we can. Or we might combat those feelings through a practice of gratitude, abundance, of being present in the moment, of reflecting on everything we have instead of what we feel like we are missing. One fictitious therapist suggested that an awkward, anxious teenager write himself a letter, explaining all of the reasons why it would be a good day. So, Evan Hansen, the protagonist of the Tony-winning Best Musical, wrote himself that letter, which went public and then viral, and then permanently changed the course of his life. At the end of the show, in the very last scene, I promise no spoilers, Evan is coming to terms with the events of the last year, and he writes himself one final letter. Dear Evan Hansen, today is going to be a good day, and here's why. Because today, no matter what, today at least you're you. No hiding, no lying, just you. And that's enough. Instead of wishing you a happy new year, I want to wish you a year of enough. I know it doesn't sound like very much, but I believe that more than happiness, enough is everything we really need. It doesn't have any correlation to how much we do or how much we have. So in a world where it seems like nothing is enough, I want you to have a year where enough is more than you could ever dream of. We live in a time and in a culture which is seduced by its own unlimited potential. We are driven by the belief that any limitation, be it economic, social, political, or spiritual, can be overcome by advancements in speed, technology, resources, or connections. We have constant access to anything we want or need. We don't have to call, or wait in line, or wait at all, or wonder. Everything is available to us in every moment. Within this unlimited potential is the possibility for abundance and flourishing, prospect and promise. But we have yet to tap into it for a positive use. Instead, we can feel like hamsters on the wheel, running as fast as we can on an endless loop. So many of you have told me about the wheels that you feel like you are running on. Achievement and promotion, multitasking and juggling, outsourcing and crowdsourcing, keeping up and loneliness, chasing something that you can't quite describe. These feelings are not unique to our geographic or religious community. Pastor and therapist Wayne Muller found similar stories when he interviewed members of his church in Santa Fe. The sheer pace and volume of their lives seems to corrode whatever joy, wonder, nourishment, or delight they may find in simply doing their best. For it has become so much more difficult to make peace with any job well done or any day well spent. Unlike the thermostat in your home or office, which knows when it has cooled or heated the space enough, we don't know that we always feel like we have an internal signal that tells us the same. Without a reliable mechanism, we can just keep going and going, never certain if or where to stop. We can become lost in our world, stuck on our wheel, eyes focused on the next task at hand, with no sign and no permission that it is time to rest. However, we do have a mechanism as old as the world itself. The opening words of the Torah, the genesis of creation, introduces the paradigm for measuring and evaluating when enough is enough. After 6 days of creation, as the sun set into the first Sabbath, we are told, heaven and earth and all their array were completed. On the seventh day, God had completed the work that had been done. Then God blessed the seventh day and called it holy, for it was on that day that God had ceased from all of the creative work that God had chosen to do. Genesis does not say that the work was completed. It does not say that God had crossed everything off of the eternal to-do list, or that God's inbox was empty. No, there was still work to be done. But God made a choice, drew a boundary in time and in space, saying, indeed, my work is not through, but I am stopping for today. Though we may want to hold ourselves to some kind of superhuman standard, let us instead connect with a part of us made in the image of our Creator. God was the first to say that enough is enough. There must be a time when we draw our own line, leave the office, turn off the phone, step away from the email, decide that whatever has been done is done. God never finished the original creation project. Instead, God created us partners in the ongoing and unfolding process of the creation of our world. As we run on our wheels, we can feel propelled toward the idea that more is always better. But reading the creation story in this way might also move us toward the potential of feeling complete in our work, even when the work itself is not done. When we are so fixated on conclusion, we miss what is good and meaningful about what we do and make in the world. For the process is just as holy as the product. Later on in our sacred story, in the moments after liberation from Egypt, our people express their gratitude with words of abundance, dayenu, which comes from the Hebrew word day, meaning enough or plenty. This one-word gratitude prayer acknowledges the wealth of miracles that God performed for our ancestors. They affirm that if they had been only given one of the multitudes of gifts, it still would have been enough. It might feel difficult to have a conversation about the concept of enough without feeling maybe a tinge of discomfort or even embarrassment, thinking about those all around our world who live with so little. Yes, there is a certain amount of privilege necessary to speak about enough, especially when we think about those who do not have the luxury to consider happiness, because they are consumed with ensuring that they have enough to simply sustain their lives. We live in a country and in a community where so many have so much. So many of us do not have to worry about our day-to-day basic needs. And all of us, no matter how much we have, are incredibly generous, both with our time and our resources. Our synagogue, I am so proud to say, is a thriving center of tikkun olam. We really practice what we preach when it comes to caring for those in need. So one way we might change our perspective around how much is enough is through a practice of gratitude. Like our ancestors, we know how very fortunate we are. Indeed, we are given the opportunity to see and recognize our own dayenu moments. Saying dayenu can be a kind of spiritual practice, a way in which we are able to reframe a narrative of scarcity into seeing all of the possibilities available and the gratitude we want to express for all it is that we do have. Dayenu helps us move across the spectrum from never enough to more than enough. This shift is not merely emotional or intellectual. It is physical. It can transform our hands, which can so easily find themselves clenched into fists, into open, outstretched, generous palms. It can move us away from the constant thinking of the brain into what could be the constant feeling of the heart. In our minds, it is always easy to rationalize and to justify and to explain why nothing is enough. But in our hearts, we can know when it is plenty. But more than doing, more than having, I have observed that our greatest challenge is in feeling like we are not enough. This feeling is so pervasive that it is present in our speech, our behavior, our relationships, even how we spend our time. So many of us walk around with a deep insecurity about our very existence. We believe that we are not okay, that we don't deserve what we have, that we need to be more in order to be loved by the people around us. And yes, I believe in self-improvement, in working on ourselves, in using this time of year as a catalyst for making changes that will make an important and lasting difference in our lives. But we don't need to change because of some kind of fundamental flaw that we have. We don't need to change because we're not perfect. Let us make changes in this year that are rooted in our strengths, our essence, the deepest part of ourselves, created in the image of our God. Let's make changes because we love ourselves, rather than trying to only fix what feels broken or ridding ourselves of what we hate. This is the primary framework of tshuva, our task during these 10 days. We are trying to return to ourselves in the life that we wish to have, a life where we don't evaluate ourselves based only on the numbers, on the scale or the ball field, the bank statement, likes on our latest Facebook post, even where we fall on the World Happiness Index. This is a return to a life where we embrace abundance rather than scarcity. Scarcity exists only to remind us, to scare us into thinking that we aren't capable. We don't have enough time or money, the newest thing will make us feel better, that we should give less, less there is not enough. But I believe that we can, and I believe that we do live in an abundant world where we can be generous because there is enough, that each of us has unique strengths we bring to every situation, and that we are always growing and changing, that there is infinite potential and promise in this new year. It is within our heads and our hearts and our hands, and I only pray that when we come back together this time next year, that we will be able to wish each other truly a happy new year. But between now and then, let's work toward a world where we see ourselves as enough, and we see each other as enough too. Let's let go of the unreasonable expectations. Let's stop running on those wheels and instead walk with the people we love through the world we are so lucky to live in. It's so much easier to only view ourselves as lacking, for we are indeed messy and complicated, intense and imperfect. But tonight and this year, let's say Dayenu, for we do enough, we have enough, and we are enough, exactly as we are, while on the journey to all that we could be. For I predict that it is going to be a great year, a year as sweet, as fruitful and as abundant as the seeds in the pomegranate. Let's stop telling ourselves the old stories about how much we're lacking. And instead, let's write each other, let's write ourselves a letter. Dear you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, today is going to be a great day, and this is going to be a great year. And here's why. Because today, no matter what, you are enough, and you are enough, and you are enough, and you are enough. All of us are enough, and that simple fact is truly enough. Shana Tova U'Mituka, may it be a sweet and happy year for all of us. Amen.